The grand halls of the Galactic Federation's central station buzzed with whispers and stares as Lady Rose walked through the crystalline corridors. Her luminescent skin glowed with a soft blue tinge, typical of the Luminar species, but there was something different about her. Unlike other Luminars who moved with calculated precision, she had a natural grace that caught everyone's attention. "Another suitor awaits in Chamber 12, my lady," her assistant, a hovering robotic sphere, announced quietly. Rose held back a sigh. This would be the 8th suitor today. As the daughter of the Luminar High Council's leader, she had grown accustomed to the constant parade of potential mates from across the galaxy. Each one came bearing gifts that would make most beings gasp in wonder. The doors to Chamber 12 slid open silently. Inside stood a tall figure from the crystal peaks of Andromeda, Prince White, his body literally carved from living crystal. Light bounced off his faceted surface, creating rainbow patterns across the walls. "Lady Rose," his voice chimed like bells, "I bring you a gift, a star captured in suspended animation, eternal in its beauty like you." He gestured to a floating orb where a miniature sun pulsed with golden light. Rose smiled politely, but her hearts weren't in it. "Thank you, Prince White. Your gift is magnificent, just like the last 100 gifts she'd received." Later that day, she retreated to her private quarters, high above the bustling levels of Central Station. The view of space stretched endlessly before her, stars twinkling like the jewelry she'd been gifted by countless admirers. "Display suitor list," she commanded her room's eye. Holographic images filled the air around her. The shapeshifter king who could become anything she desired, the energy being who offered her eternal life as pure consciousness, the hive-mind emperor who promised her connection to 1,000,000,000 souls. Each suitor was perfect in their own way. Each had evolved or engineered themselves beyond what nature had intended. The shapeshifter had no true form, the energy being had no physical limitations, and the hive mind had no individual flaws. "My lady," her robotic assistant hummed, "the High Council requests your presence. They wish to discuss your reluctance to choose a mate." Rose touched the window, her reflection showing a face that looked tired despite its perfect features. The council, led by her father, worried about her lack of interest in any suitor. They didn't understand why she turned away beings who had achieved what most would consider perfection. In the council chamber, 12 Luminars sat in a circle, their bodies giving off soft light in various shades of blue. Her father's light pulsed with concern as she entered. "Daughter," he spoke, his voice carrying the wisdom of centuries, "you have rejected 342 suitors from 47 different advanced species. The galaxy watches and waits for your choice. Our allies grow restless. Father, the crystalline prince offers you eternal beauty. The energy collective promises you unlimited knowledge. The quantum king would make you master of time itself. Why do you hesitate?" Rose looked at the concerned faces around her. How could she explain that all this perfection felt hollow? That each suitor seemed more like a carefully crafted artwork than a real person? "I will attend the upcoming Galactic Summit," she said carefully. "Perhaps there, I will find what I seek." Her father's light dimmed slightly in resignation. "Very well. The summit begins in 3 days on a newly admitted world, a primitive planet called Earth." Rose felt a sudden spark of interest. Earth. She had heard strange things about this world and its people. They were considered primitive by galactic standards, still bound by physical forms, still subject to death and disease, still imperfect. As she left the council chamber, for the first time in years, she felt something new: curiosity. What would these humans be like? These beings who hadn't yet engineered away their flaws or evolved beyond their limitations. Little did she know, this summit would change not just her life, but the understanding of perfection throughout the galaxy. Earth's Grand Conference Center in Geneva stood out as remarkably simple compared to the architectural wonders of other galactic civilizations. As Lady Rose's ship descended through the atmosphere, she noticed how the building, while impressive by human standards, lacked the usual crystalline spires or gravity-defying structures common to interstellar meeting places. The landing pad buzzed with activity as delegates from across the galaxy arrived. Some floated in energy fields, others shifted between forms, and a few existed as pure light. Among them walked the humans, solid, unchanging, and somehow fascinating in their limitation to a single form. "The air here contains numerous pollutants," her assistant warned. "Shall I create a purification field around you?" "No," Rose decided. "I want to experience this world as it is." As she walked into the conference hall, she noticed how the humans stopped to stare at her glowing form, their expressions showing undisguised wonder. Unlike the carefully controlled reactions of other species, their amazement seemed genuine and unfiltered. The opening ceremony began with speeches from various representatives. Rose sat in her designated place, trying to focus on the words but finding herself distracted by the human delegates. They fidgeted, whispered, showed emotions openly, all things considered improper in high galactic society. During the first break, she found herself walking through the building's garden. Real plants grew here, not the perfect holographic or engineered varieties she was used to. Some flowers were wilting, others blooming, each following its own natural cycle. "Beautiful, aren't they?" a voice said behind her. "Even the imperfect ones." She turned to find a human male watching her. He wore what she learned was called a suit, and unlike her other suitors, he didn't try to stand unnaturally straight or project an aura of perfection. "I'm Tom," he said simply, offering no titles or achievements. "Would you like to know the names of these flowers?" Rose found herself nodding, surprised by his casual approach. Most beings would have launched into elaborate introductions and displays of their status by now. As they walked, Tom pointed out different plants, sharing not just their names but little stories about them. He showed her a rose. She smiled at sharing a name with the flower, with slightly damaged petals. "This one fought through a storm last week," he explained. "It's not perfect anymore, but I think that makes it more interesting. Each mark tells a story." Something about his words struck her deeply. In her world, any imperfection would have been immediately corrected, the flower replaced or genetically modified to withstand all damage. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the conference center's entrance. A delegation of energy beings had arrived, their presence turning the air electric. At their head was one of her most persistent suitors, Lord Bright. "Lady Rose." Lord Bright's voice resonated in everyone's minds. "I had hoped to find you here. I've brought you a gift. The collected knowledge of 1,000 dead stars." Before Rose could respond, Tom spoke up. "That sounds fascinating, but Lady Rose was in the middle of learning about Earth's botanical species. Perhaps later." The casual dismissal of such a powerful being was unheard of. Rose felt the air crackle with tension as Lord Bright's energy form flickered with surprise and barely contained irritation. "Of course," Lord Bright responded smoothly, though his light pulsed with barely concealed annoyance. "We have much to discuss at the evening gathering, my lady." As the energy beings glided away, Rose looked at Tom with new interest. He hadn't tried to compete with Lord Bright's impressive gift. He hadn't changed forms or demonstrated any special powers. He had simply continued being himself. "Shall we look at the orchids next?" he asked, as if nothing unusual had happened. "They're quite particular about their growing conditions. Bit demanding, really, but worth the effort." For the first time in years, Rose felt herself truly smile, not the diplomatic expression she usually wore, but a real, spontaneous gesture. Perhaps this summit would be more interesting than she had expected. As the summit continued into its second day, Lady Rose found herself seeking out Tom's company with increasing frequency. During one particularly tedious session about galactic trade routes, she noticed him slipping out of the conference room, and to her own surprise, followed him. She found him in the building's cafeteria, not the elaborate banquet hall set up for the delegates, but the simple staff dining area. He sat at a small table, eating something from a paper bag. "Would you like to try a sandwich?" he asked when he saw her, pulling out a chair. It's nothing fancy. Just cheese and tomato. But sometimes the simple things are the best. Rose sat down, aware of the stares from the human staff. A being of pure light eating a sandwich was probably not something they saw every day. "I've never eaten physical food before," she admitted. "My species evolved beyond the need centuries ago." Tom's eyes widened. "Never? Not even once? That's kind of sad, actually." The comment would have been considered incredibly rude in galactic high society, but Rose found herself laughing. "I suppose it is, isn't it?" She focused her energy, temporarily solidifying her form enough to take a bite of the offered sandwich. The explosion of flavors and textures was overwhelming. The soft bread, the sharp cheese, the fresh tomato. It was imperfect, messy, and absolutely wonderful. "This is remarkable," she said, watching a crumb fall onto the table. "Just wait until you try ice cream." Tom grinned. Later that afternoon, they walked through the city streets of Geneva. Rose had shifted her appearance to look more human to avoid drawing attention, though she kept a subtle glow about her. Tom showed her small things that her other suitors would have considered beneath notice: the way sunlight reflected off the lake, the sound of street musicians, the smell of coffee from small cafes. "Tell me," she said as they sat on a park bench, watching children play, "why don't humans try to perfect themselves like other species? You have the technology now through your alliance with the Federation." Tom thought for a moment, watching a child fall, cry, then get back up and continue playing. "I think it's because we've learned that perfection isn't always what it seems. Look at that kid. He fell, but he learned from it. If we made children who couldn't fall, would they ever learn to get back up?" The concept was revolutionary to Rose. In her society, falling was considered a flaw to be engineered away, not a learning opportunity. Her thoughts were interrupted by an urgent message from her assistant. "My lady, Lord Bright and Prince White are requesting your presence at an emergency cultural exchange meeting." Rose sighed, knowing what that meant. More displays of power, more perfect gifts, more attempts to win her favor. She looked at Tom, who was tossing breadcrumbs to some very imperfect-looking pigeons. "Would you come with me?" she asked impulsively. "To the meeting? Are you sure? I'm not exactly qualified to be in the same room as beings who can reshape reality." "That's exactly why I want you there," she said, standing up. "You see things differently." As they walked back to the conference center, Rose realized something had changed within her. She had spent centuries surrounded by beings who had engineered away all flaws, who existed in states of perfect harmony and balance. Yet here she was, happier than she'd ever been, watching a human try to get pigeon feathers off his suit and complaining about the wind messing up his hair. The meeting ahead would be challenging. Her suitors wouldn't understand her growing attachment to this simple human. They would see only his limitations, his imperfections, his finite nature. But for the first time, Rose wondered if perhaps they were the ones with limitations, not of body or power, but of understanding. As they entered the conference center, she made a decision. It was time to show the galaxy that perfection might not be what they thought it was. The news spread through the Galactic Federation's communication networks faster than light speed. Images of Lady Rose, the most sought-after being in the galaxy, walking through Geneva with a human filled every holographic display and quantum feed. "Impossible," declared the shapeshifter king, his form rapidly cycling through expressions of shock and disgust. "She walks among them in a simplified form, eating their primitive food, listening to their underdeveloped music." In the conference center's main hall, whispers and stares followed Rose and Tom as they entered the emergency meeting. Lord Bright's energy form crackled with barely contained emotion, while Prince White's crystalline surface had developed several small cracks from stress. "Lady Rose," Lord Bright's voice boomed across the room, "we must discuss your recent activities. They are unbecoming of your status." Rose felt Tom tense beside her, but squeeze his hand slightly, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "My activities are my own concern, Lord Bright." Prince White stepped forward, his crystal body catching the light dramatically. You are the daughter of the Luminar High Council. Your actions affect diplomatic relations across the galaxy. To be seen with a human. I wasn't aware that my choice of companions required approval from the Galactic Federation, Rose replied, her glow intensifying slightly. The meeting chamber had filled with delegates from various species, all watching the confrontation with intense interest. Some were broadcasting the scene directly to their homeworlds. Perhaps, suggested a representative of the hive mind emperor, the human has employed some primitive form of mind control. Their species is known for their deceptive capabilities. Tom laughed out loud at this, drawing shocked gasps from the assembled aliens. If I could control minds, I'd start with making my boss give me better parking at work. The simple joke, so out of place in the tense diplomatic setting, made Rose's light pulse with amusement. Several delegates muttered in disapproval at this display of unchecked emotion. Lord Bright moved closer, his energy field causing the air to crackle. Lady Rose, I offer you one final gift. The power to reshape entire solar systems. Surely this demonstrates the superiority of advanced beings over primitive species. That's quite a gift, Tom commented mildly. I just brought sandwiches. Before Rose could respond, her assistant burst into the room. My lady, urgent message from the Luminar High Council. Your father demands your immediate return home. The room fell silent. A direct order from the High Council couldn't be ignored, even by Rose. She felt her light dim slightly as she read the message. Her father was furious about the diplomatic incident she had caused. You must see now, Prince White said softly, his crystal voice chiming, that this dalliance with a human cannot continue. Return to your proper place among the advanced species. Rose looked around the room at the perfect, flawless beings who had pursued her for so long. Then she looked at Tom, who simply stood there, completely ordinary yet somehow more real than anyone else in the room. No, she said clearly, her voice carrying through the chamber. I will not return home yet, and I will not end my friendship with Tom. The scandal that followed her declaration rocked the diplomatic community. Within hours, 3 major species had threatened to withdraw from trade agreements. The Shapeshifter King declared it an insult to evolved beings everywhere. The Energy Collective released a statement condemning the degradation of advanced society. But as Rose and Tom left the chamber together, neither looking back at the chaos they caused, she felt more certain than ever. Let them talk. Let them scheme. For the first time in her long life, she was choosing her own path. You know, Tom said as they walked out, I still have that ice cream to show you. Rose's light brightened with genuine joy, uncaring of the thousands of beings watching and judging. Sometimes, she was learning. The greatest rebellion was simply being true to oneself. The Galactic Federation's emergency session was called 3 days after Rose's declaration. The Grand Chamber of the United Nations building had been modified to accommodate beings of all forms, from energy to crystal to pure thought. At its center stood a simple podium where Rose would address the gathered representatives. Before she could speak, her father's image appeared in the chamber, his light pulsing with barely contained dismay. Daughter, think carefully about what you are about to do. Centuries of diplomatic relations hang in the balance. Rose looked at Tom, who sat quietly in the human section. He gave her a small nod, and somehow that simple gesture meant more than all the grand displays of power she'd seen in her long life. She stepped to the podium, her natural glow filling the room. Distinguished representatives of the galaxy, I stand before you today, not just as a Luminar noble, but as someone who has discovered something that we, in our rush toward perfection, have forgotten. The chamber hummed with murmurs and electromagnetic disturbances as various species reacted. For centuries, we have engineered away what we considered flaws. The shapeshifters removed the need for fixed form. The energy beings transcended physical matter. My own people eliminated biological processes we deemed primitive. Lord Bright's energy form flickered. We evolved beyond such limitations. How can you defend remaining bound by them? Because, Rose continued, her voice growing stronger, In removing our so-called flaws, we have also removed our ability to grow, to change, to truly live. She gestured toward Tom. Humans are not perfect. They get hungry. They get tired. They make mistakes. But in doing so, they learn. They adapt. They feel deeply. Prince White's crystal form resonated with disapproval. They die. Lady Rose. Their forms decay. How can you prefer that to eternal perfection? Because their impermanence makes everything they do matter more, Rose replied. They love knowing it won't last forever. They create art knowing it might not endure. They take risks knowing they can't simply reform if they fail. She turned to address the entire chamber. I've spent time among humans. Yes, they're messy. Yes, they're emotional. Yes, they're limited. But they're also capable of something we've engineered out of ourselves: genuine growth. A hive mind representative pulsed with confusion. Growth? They remain confined to their original forms. Not physical growth, Rose explained. Growth of character, of understanding, of spirit. When was the last time any of us truly changed? Not our forms or our energy patterns, but who we are. The chamber fell silent as her words sank in. I choose to spend time with humans not despite their imperfections, but because of them. They show me new ways of seeing the universe every day. They fail, they learn, they try again. When was the last time any of us truly tried something new, knowing we might fail? Her father's image flickered. Daughter, what are you saying? I'm saying that in our quest for perfection, we've become stagnant. We've engineered away our ability to be surprised, to learn, to truly feel. We've become like perfect statues, beautiful, eternal, and completely unchanging. She looked at Tom again, drawing strength from his presence. I don't just spend time with humans. I learn from them. And if that shocking revelation causes diplomatic issues, then perhaps we need to examine why we're so threatened by beings who embrace their imperfections. The chamber erupted in discussion, some beings arguing violently, others falling into contemplative silence. Rose's words had struck a chord that resonated through the gathered species. My lady, her assistant whispered, the galactic news networks are requesting permission to broadcast your statement across all known space. Rose nodded, knowing that her words would cause chaos throughout the galaxy. But as she looked at the gathered representatives, she saw something she hadn't expected. Uncertainty. For beings who had engineered away all doubt, all imperfection, the first spark of uncertainty might be the most perfect thing they'd experienced in centuries. Perhaps, she thought, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. After Rose's speech, the galactic representatives called for a traditional challenge, an ancient custom used to settle disputes among advanced species. 3 of Rose's most powerful suitors would test Tom's worth through trials of their choosing. The first challenge came from Prince White, who created a massive crystalline maze that shifted and changed constantly. Navigate this in 1 hour, he declared, or admit your species' inferiority. Tom stood at the entrance, looking at the towering crystal walls that refracted light in dazzling patterns. Advanced beings could simply phase through the walls or calculate the perfect path. A human had to rely on much simpler methods. He pulled out a piece of chalk from his pocket. What is that primitive marking tool? Prince White asked, his crystal form vibrating with amusement. Something children use to find their way home, Tom replied, marking the first wall with an arrow. As he ventured deeper into the maze, he left a trail of marks and symbols, creating his own map as the paths changed around him. When the maze shifted, erasing his marks, he started humming to himself, using the echoes to gauge distances and open spaces. Where advanced beings would have used quantum calculations, he used simple trial and error, learning from each dead end. He emerged with 5 minutes to spare, chalk dust on his hands, and a smile on his face. Lord Bright's challenge came next, a test of knowledge. He created a sphere of pure energy containing the wisdom of 1,000 civilizations. Comprehend its contents, he commanded, or acknowledge your mental limitations. Instead of trying to absorb the information directly like an advanced being would, Tom studied the patterns of energy itself. This sphere, he said slowly, it's not just containing information, it's telling a story. He walked around it, observing how the energy flowed and shifted. It's showing how civilizations rise and fall, how they learn and grow. The pattern itself is the lesson, isn't it? Not the individual pieces of knowledge. Lord Bright's energy form flickered in surprise. No one had ever approached his test this way before. The final challenge came from the Shapeshifter King, who created an arena filled with constantly morphing obstacles and threats. Survive for 10 minutes, he said, his form rippling with anticipation, or admit your physical inadequacy. Tom faced the chaos with nothing but his human body in mind. Where the shapeshifter expected him to try matching the morphing threats, Tom instead used the environment itself. He turned the shifting forms against each other, used momentum and timing rather than trying to overpower anything. When a tendril of energy swept toward him, he didn't try to block or absorb it. He ducked, letting it hit a crystalline formation behind him. When the ground became unstable, he didn't try to stabilize it. He used its movement to propel himself forward. As the final seconds ticked down, Tom stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard but undefeated. His suit was torn, his hair was a mess, and he had a few scratches, but he was smiling. "You see," he said to the gathered beings, catching his breath, "humans don't need to be perfect. We just need to be adaptable." Rose moved to stand beside him, her light pulsing with pride. "He didn't win these challenges by trying to match your abilities," she announced to the watching crowd. "He won by using what makes humans unique: creativity, persistence, and the ability to learn from every failure." The three challengers conferred among themselves, their forms shifting and pulsing as they communicated. Finally, Prince White stepped forward. "We must acknowledge," he said, his crystal voice ringing clearly, "that perhaps there is merit in approaching problems differently than we do. The human has demonstrated capabilities we did not expect." Tom straightened his crooked tie and grinned. "Thanks. Now does anyone want to get coffee? All this challenging work makes me hungry." The gathered beings watched in amazement as Rose, still glowing brightly, took his arm and walked with him toward the building's small cafe, leaving behind the grand arena and its profound implications for another day. 1 year after the challenges, the Galactic Federation gathered again on Earth, but this time the atmosphere was very different. The Grand Hall of the Conference Center now hosted a celebration unprecedented in galactic history, a union ceremony between Lady Rose of the Luminars and Tom, a human diplomat. The ceremony itself reflected the changes that had swept through galactic society. Instead of the usual perfect engineered arrangements, the hall contained both living flowers and energy formations. Crystal beings stood next to humans, while shapeshifters chatted with energy entities about the strange but intriguing concept of wedding cake. Rose's father, who had initially opposed the union, stood before the gathered species. His light pulsed with an emotion he would have once considered a flaw: pride. "A year ago," he addressed the assembly, "we thought we understood perfection. We believed it meant removing all flaws, transcending all limitations. My daughter helped us see a different truth." In the front row, Tom sat holding Rose's hand, her glow matching the simple gold band on his finger. Their very presence together had sparked a revolution in galactic thinking. Across the galaxy, her father continued, species that had engineered away their capacity for change are rediscovering the value of imperfection. The shapeshifters have started maintaining forms long enough to experience physical sensations. The energy beings are exploring emotions they once considered primitive. He gestured to the assembled crowd. "Even my own people, the Luminars, are learning to appreciate the beauty of change and growth. We're discovering that true perfection isn't about removing all flaws. It's about learning from them." Reports from across the galaxy confirmed his words. The hive mind emperor had started encouraging individual thoughts among its components. The crystal people were experimenting with natural growth patterns instead of engineered symmetry. Species that had once competed to achieve perfect forms were now studying human art, music, and literature, fascinated by how imperfection could create beauty. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and celebrated, Lord Bright approached the couple. His energy form had changed, showing subtle variations and patterns that would have once been considered flaws. "I must admit," he said, "watching you two has taught me something about power. All my ability to reshape reality meant nothing compared to the power of genuine growth and change." Prince White, his crystal form now showing natural variations instead of perfect symmetry, joined them. "We spent eons trying to engineer away our capacity for surprise, for wonder, for love. How strange that a species we once considered primitive would show us what we had lost." Tom smiled at them both. "Well, humans have a saying, 'Perfect is the enemy of good.'" Rose's light danced with happiness as she looked at her new husband. "And sometimes," she added, "what we think are flaws are actually the things that make us special." As the celebration continued, news arrived from various worlds. The Galactic Federation was establishing new protocols, encouraging cultural exchange with Earth. Species that had once looked down on humans were now sending observers to learn about art, music, and the strange human concept of learning from mistakes. "What do you think about all this?" Tom asked Rose as they watched advanced beings awkwardly attempting to dance to human music. Rose's light pulsed with love as she watched her father attempting to eat a piece of wedding cake, something no luminar had done in thousands of years. "I think we're all learning that there are many kinds of perfection. Sometimes it's found in the most imperfect places." As the Earth's sun set outside, casting warm colors through the windows, the gathered species witnessed something they had forgotten existed: the perfect beauty of an imperfect moment, shared with those you love. The galaxy would never be the same, and that perhaps was the most perfect outcome of all. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, countless other species began to wonder if perhaps they too had been wrong about what made something truly perfect. The end.